All right, and we'll cross to Aldrin in a little while and see how those preparations are going. Associate Professor at the Institute for African Renaissance Studies at UNISA, Simphiwe Sesanti, meanwhile, explained the process that will allow Mnangagwa to replace Mugabe as president. My colleague Peter Ndoro spoke to him.
Now, to understand the process that will allow Emmerson Mnangagwa to replace Robert Mugabe as president, we're now joined from our Pretoria studios this evening by Associate Professor at the Institute for African Renaissance Studies at UNISA, Simphiwe Sesanti. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so Emmerson Mnangagwa has arrived in Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Emmerson Mnangagwa has arrived in Zimbabwe, and so now everybody is expecting him to be made president. What needs to happen for that to be allowed to happen?
As it has been explained in Zimbabwe by the leaders and the politicians involved, that when after Mugabe had tendered his resignation, Mr. Mnangagwa was going to be sworn in Parliament and thereafter, accepted as the president of the country. And we are made to understand that that interim process may take place for about 3 months. And thereafter, when the Zimbabwean situation is calmed, there would be fresh elections taking place in Zimbabwe.
All right, so we're in uncharted territory at the moment. Usually when a president is incapacitated or he leaves the country, sometimes he leaves somebody, usually the deputy president, to become president. The president has resigned. Who has got executive authority over the country at this moment in time?
That has not been clearly stated, because at the time, when the president was compelled to tender his resignation, the person perceived or expected to take over was outside the country and he was in South Africa. So therefore, the assumption then would be that the ruling party, having made an expression of intention, would have then Mnangagwa. So, but in between, in the interim, nothing has been explicitly stated. We would therefore assume that Parliament continues to play that role.
Explain to us how a president is elected. My understanding is that the voters are the ones that elect a president. It's not MPs that can just say, we would like this person to be president in Parliament.
No, what takes place, particularly in Zimbabwe, as you know, it is the people that are voting the party in. So in this case, the party that was in power and continues to be in power is ZANU-PF. And the president of ZANU-PF was at the same time the president of the country. And therefore, that being the case, the people having elected ZANU-PF and ZANU-PF being the dominant party in Parliament, the president is then elected in that sense. And so in this case, you would recall that after President Mugabe had fired, his deputy president, Mnangagwa, there was another second vice president that was there, but, there was silence around him. And he had remained in place, and so that being the case, then Mnangagwa, then still you would recall that Mnangagwa himself was fired from not only as the deputy president, but he was also expelled from the party after Mugabe and his Politburo met. And so what then took place was that ZANU, or the faction that belongs to Mnangagwa, got together, and throughout the country, provincial chairpersons, came together and recalled Mugabe as the president of ZANU-PF, and by extension also the president of the country. Okay. And therefore, that being the case, they reinstated.
Okay, well, my concern again is the legal standing, because if the people vote for the president, in theory, he could have been an independent. They voted for Robert Mugabe. They didn't vote for ZANU-PF. And so ZANU-PF, in theory, cannot just put forward a candidate to replace the one who used to be with their party. They're two separate things, I would think.
But then you must understand that you must not think that I'm defending ZANU-PF. Please do recall that in Parliament the parliamentarians were going to impeach President Robert Mugabe, right? They'd already, and so therefore that process was going to take place in Parliament, where Mnangagwa was going to be called upon and become. Remember, as I said earlier on, ZANU-PF was still the party that was voted. The people voted, Mugabe being a representative or mandated by ZANU-PF in that case. And Mnangagwa was appointed by Mugabe, having been mandated by the ZANU-PF having been mandated by the people of Zimbabwe.
All right. Well, I suppose that it's all academic now, because the one person who could have lodged some kind of complaint is the one who resigned. And so we move on to the next process. And so on Friday, what will actually happen then?
It was said that within 48 hours, Parliament is going to swear in Mnangagwa, and Mnangagwa becomes the president of Zimbabwe.
All right. Okay, that's where we're going to leave it for the time being. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts and insights with us this evening.